Wonderful. Good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year. This is January's Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Board Committee for January 13th, 2021. Calling our meeting to order. We are virtual for this meeting. And just in review of the agenda that we have so far, our first item is public comment. And Wade, do we have any folks lined up for public comment?
I have not received a notification, but if there is anybody who is here as an attendee for public comment, please feel free to type in the chat and we will acknowledge you.
I'll wait a couple seconds here. Okay, just to confirm, Wade, I'm not seeing anybody in the chat box. Is that confirm
no,
that?
Sir. Me neither.
Alrighty, well, moving on to our next item is approval of minutes. Our meeting minutes from December 9th were attached to the agenda, and I trust everyone had reviewed. Is there any commentary concerning those minutes that we can make those suggested edits, and then we can move forward? Okay, hearing none. Wade, I think just because we're in our virtual environment, we just need to move forward and note that no adjustments have been made to the minutes.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Alrighty. So our discussion items are up next, and are we going in order?
Yes, sir. Dr. Wong will be up first. I will make him the presenter.
Okay, so first will be up Dr. Wong here talking about 2021 safety performance targets. So Dr. Wong, welcome.
Thanks for having me again. Happy New Year, everyone, and good evening. Let me get situated real quick. Can you all see my slides?
It's coming up now, I believe. We can see your desktop, Johnny. There we go.
You got the PowerPoint? All right, cool, great. For the record, Johnny Wong, Hillsborough MPO staff. Thanks everybody for having me once again. I'm here to present you with the 2021 safety performance targets. Before we get into what the targets are for 2021, I'll provide a little bit of background context for any of the new members who are on this committee. Safety performance measures originate from MAP 21 legislation. That legislation requires us to track performance for 5 safety measures and then set targets for the coming calendar year. The federal reporting requirements are that the measures and the targets have to be calculated using a 5-year rolling average, and that 5-year period has to end prior to the year that the targets are due. So because we're setting targets for calendar year 2021, that means that the data we're looking at has to span from 2016 through 2020. In addition to the 5 prescribed measures that you can see on this slide, the MPO board has voted to track 2 additional measures, and those are the year-end fatality total. So the total just at the end of 2021, not a 5-year average, as well as motorcycle fatalities.
No, I wasn't able to. I signed up for.
I can hear you in the background, Jim.
I'm sorry, point of order here. If we could mute, can we do that? Can we mute that call?
They're all muted. All right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. Sorry for calling that out. I know Jim wouldn't take offense to that. Regardless, the MAP 21 legislation requires both state DOTs and MPOs to report performance and set targets every year. This is the 5th year that we're engaging in this activity. For the previous 4 years, FDOT has set its state targets at 0. But this past April, the Federal Highway Administration determined that the state has not made significant progress toward achieving that target. It's my understanding that DOT and the feds are working in consultation to help the state select more appropriate targets for 2021, but that target process has not been finalized, and thus we are taking the lead for the first time since that legislation was passed. We typically wait for the DOT to set its targets, which happens sometime around August, and then, August, and then we have about 180 days to then establish our targets, which puts us in the time frame of around February. Our goal, despite DOT not setting its targets yet, is to have this wrapped up before February 26th. And then at a future date, which hasn't yet been determined, the DOT will review our targets to determine whether or not significant progress is being made toward achieving them. As I mentioned, this is now the 5th year that we will be forecasting safety performance and setting the targets, but this is probably the first year out of the 5 that myself and the rest of my team feel less than confident in our ability to predict the future. Typically, we're somewhat close. However, last January, when we brought you these targets and we set them, we were expecting to be close. And then around March of 2020, our assumptions all got thrown out the window. Our assumptions of normalcy were totally thrown out. Of course, the big story for last year was the pandemic and the impact of COVID and the COVID lockdown on travel behavior. What we saw was about a 10 to 20% drop in traffic volume throughout the course of the year. The traffic volumes dropped most significantly from about March through June or July. And then as we started getting closer toward the end of the year, we saw a gradual rebound. We're not quite at what we would consider normal traffic volumes, but last time I checked, we were only down by about 8%. So we're getting closer. Whether or not that's a good thing remains to be seen. In the past year, despite the implications for COVID and the lockdown, our planning work still continued, and we were able to produce a lot of really great studies, one of which being the Vision Zero Corridor study, which Lisa Silva presented. That was something that her and Wade worked on this past year and was presented to the board this morning. That study looked at how to improve safety on several corridors that are listed on the top 20 high injury network. In addition to very specific recommendations for some corridors, we also presented a Vision Zero Speed Management Action Plan, which takes a more holistic or general approach to managing speed across the county. And lastly, the important news is that the Independent Oversight Committee held its first public hearing in October, and it certified the 2021 project plans for all agencies. However, despite the plans being certified for compliance, the litigation over validity of the surtax remains ongoing. Before we reveal what our projections are for 2021, I want to quickly touch on the methodology that we use for forecasting performance and therefore setting the targets. This methodology has been nominated by the Federal Highway Administration to be a best practice in years past, and we've shared this methodology with a number of MPOs, both around the state and nation, and it's been adopted by several. So we're very proud of the work that we've done on this effort. I know that we have presented it to you in the past, but just to recap, we produce our safety targets by projecting the number of crashes that we will have by year's end. We use a straightforward linear projection dating back to, or not dating back, but using at least 10 years worth of historical data, so that improves our confidence in our projections. Once we have that projection for year-end total, we then subtract the crash reduction benefits that we calculated through the 2045 long-range transportation plan work. So we end with the anticipated number of crashes, and then we subtract the crashes we think we can avoid by making smart safety improvements. We base those crash reduction benefits on the amount of revenue that's invested specifically in safety projects, and we synchronize that with the capital improvements plans that we receive from all the local governments. So we use that information to try to be as accurate as we can. This year we had to come up with several assumptions. Again, this is the first year that we're less than confident. Typically we're pretty close with our projections. Last year we got close by accident. This year, the things that we held to be, or the assumptions that we're holding to be true, are that the sales tax funds will not be released in time to program. So even if the Florida Supreme Court rules that the surtax is valid and the funds are released, we're assuming that they won't be released in time to complete any projects that may affect the crash performance by the end of the year. The second assumption we made is that traffic volumes in 2020 were down by about 10%. We assume that they will rebound somewhat slowly throughout the rest of 2021, and probably by year's end, we'll get back to what we would consider a normal level. We base that assumption on a report by the Florida Economic Forecast, which predicted that our state's economic recovery will occur much faster than some other states. So we're assuming, we're using that information to assume that our volume will rebound to pre-COVID levels sometime around the end of 2021. And without further ado, here are the numbers that we projected using that methodology that I just described. The first target is one of our discretionary targets that was requested by the board. This is the single year-end fatality total. So this is not a 5-year rolling average. And based on the data that we have, we're predicting that by the end of 2021, we will have no more than 190 fatalities. And so our goal will be to come in at less than 190. This is the first target that is prescribed by the Federal Highway Administration. This is a required target, and this is calculated on a 5-year rolling average. Based on that methodology, we're predicting that by year's end, we will come in with less than 195 fatalities. The next target is motorcycle fatalities. Again, this is one that was requested by the board and we have provided to you all. In 2019, we had an abnormally high year for motorcycle fatalities. We typically average around 30 fatalities each year. That's not a success story. However, that's just what the averages typically are. In 2019, we had 52 motorcycle fatalities, so almost doubled. In 2020, we got somewhat fortunate that the fatality totals dropped significantly. So we went from about, I think it was 52 or 53 to 25 last year. And we predict, or we think that that was the result of folks having less discretionary income to spend on a sport bike. In 2019, we think that the number was very high because 2019 had a record number of motorcycle licenses issued. So these were new motorcycle riders, and it was a record year for sport bike registrations. Those two pieces of evidence tell us that it was probably folks who are using a motorcycle as a recreational vehicle more so than their primary mode of transportation. And so with the economic decline that we saw due to COVID, it makes a lot of sense that motorcycle fatalities dropped significantly. And so if we assume that our motorcycle riders will stay at a relatively low level, as in we're not seeing an uptick in registrations or licenses issued, by the year's end, our 5-year rolling average should be 34.95. So our target is to come in at less than that. Next target is 5-year average for serious injuries. We have seen a pretty significant decline in this area of crash performance for going on 10 years. Last year, we actually nailed our prediction. We projected that 2020 we would see 1,255 serious injuries, and we nailed that number on the dot. If we're to continue the decline by the same rate through the end of 2021, we will end with a serious injury average of 1,201, and our target will be to come in at less than that. Sorry, I skipped one. The next target is non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries combined. So these are bike ped. And as you might imagine, a result of folks getting out of their cars and folks not being able to go to the gym, using their bicycles as a mode of or a means of exercise, we had a pretty high number of non-motorized fatalities and injuries this past year. We were happy to see a lot of folks getting out and using modes of active transportation, but we were very much not happy to see the resulting increase in crashes. Last year, we set a target to have this number be 222. So we missed it by quite a bit. Of course, that's attributable to the number of pedestrians and cyclists being on the road and riding and walking in dangerous conditions. We're assuming that that number will not be quite as high in 2021. And if that threshold is not met, our year-end target will be to come in at less than 230. Our second to last target that we have to look at is fatality rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. This number will drop significantly by the end of 2021, and if the rate holds steady, we're going to see a target of 1.38 or less. I will caveat that the targets that involve a rate of vehicle miles traveled are subject to those assumptions that we talked about before we began. We don't have super accurate data on the volumes right now because the certified numbers won't come in until about summer. So all of these targets that we're setting using a rate per vehicle miles traveled, they're subject to all of our assumptions, and as a result, we're a little bit less certain of our ability to predict those. And finally, the serious injury rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. Based on the methodology, we're calculating that by year's end, it will come in at 8.49. And that is pretty much in line with the trend that we've seen over the past decade. Our serious injury rate is going down because volumes have been so high. And so even though we're predicting that our volumes will remain less than pre-COVID levels, we're expecting it to drop just a little bit. And so our target will be to not exceed 8.49. Before I wrap up, I just want to give you a report card. So we set these targets that you see on the second column from the left last year. Last year, we predicted that we would end the year with 209 fatalities. We ended with 192. That's still quite a bit, but that's a market improvement, and we think that that's mostly attributable to COVID and the effects on travel behavior. So we did meet that target. We predicted that we would have a 5-year average of fatalities of 204 or less, and we came in at 202, so we met that target as well. We set a serious injury target to not exceed 1255. We met that target on the nose. Next, our motorcycle fatality target was to come in at less than 44.5, and we ended the year with 40.2. And moving on, we did not meet the target of non-motorized fatalities and injuries. Again, last year was an exceptionally high number, and that pushed our average way up. We predicted that 2020 would end with 222, and we ended with 229. We predicted that the fatality rate per 100 million VMT would come in at 1.41, and we exceeded that by a little bit. We ended the year at 1.49, so we missed that target. And our serious injury rate, we predicted that that would be 8.7, and we ended the year at 9 even, so we failed to meet that target as well. Again, the results of the fatality and serious injury rate, again, are dependent upon our estimates for volume. So based on the accuracy of the volume estimate, that kind of determined that we didn't meet the target, but we won't know for sure until we get data in the summer of 2021. We would have proposed this to you as a recommended action to adopt the 2021 safety targets. Since that's not possible, I will solicit any feedback that you all have, and I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Alrighty, thank you, Dr. Wong. Is there any questions or discussion items up here? Have we unmuted everybody?
If anyone is having an issue unmuting, please just type something in the chat, or feel free to try and raise your hand or write something in the questions box. And I do see one question in the questions box. Excuse me, let me expand that. Do you know how the county has fared versus other counties in Florida in terms of these targets?
Unfortunately, we weren't able to get data statewide in time to turn around a comparative chart. This year, DOT was a little bit behind the schedule based on that federal highway review. I know that they were turning most of their attention toward working with the reviewers on establishing meaningful targets. There was a pretty significant delay in us getting this crash data, so I was only able to pull it for our county and not others. But we will have the ability to compare sometime around summer, because we're planning on updating our state of the system report. And by then, we should have crash data that covers the entire state.
Okay. Can we unmute Jim? Is that possible?
I'm unmuted. Yeah, my question was, how are other changes that are, you know, sort of other than physical improvements like reductions in speed limits and things like that, how are they accounted for in any way, or are they just artifacts?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Jim. Yeah, we do consider structural improvements, the potential for legislative improvements like reducing the speed, landscaping as well. All of those were factored into our crash reduction benefit methodology. So we looked at the most common safety improvements that are deployed on our roadways, and there is something called a crash modification factor database. We can look up each individual improvement, and it shows us the extent to which that improvement, if deployed, would have an impact on crashes. So based on the amount of money we have to spend, we looked at what would be the optimum way to put safety what would be the optimum formula for these safety improvements that could allow us to reduce our crashes the most. And in the end, given the existing funding levels, we estimate that we can drop crashes by about 1% per year. If that sales tax money were to be released, we estimate that we could reduce by 2 to 3%, but that's a pretty conservative estimate. Most of the professional planners here probably feel that we would be able to multiply that number again if those sales tax funds were released.
As I recall, Margaret Kubelin's presented on crash mitigation some pretty interesting data. My question's answered. Thank you.
Thanks,
and Jim, just to follow up on that, as part of, and we hear this over and over again, that just changing the speed limits will not change people's behaviors. So I think that's largely factored in with safety improvements that are designed to reduce the speed limits. So it is accounted for in that way in the methodology as well. Just
thanks.
Did I see Bill Sapper wanted to say something? Did I see that?
Am I unmuted?
Nope. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I just wondered if there were any other actions done by any of the municipalities or counties that showed improvements that you thought should be highlighted.
The city of Tampa tomorrow is going to be presenting their work on the Tampa's implementation of our Vision Zero program and some of the city's strategies to reducing speed. I have seen that presentation several times. If you have the opportunity to sit in on it tomorrow at 1:30, I would highly recommend it. Because we have most of the jurisdictions here, I would maybe turn it over to them. Richard Rank could speak to the county's strategies to improving the crash rate. And Steven's here right now. I think I saw him. They could probably give you more specifics than I do. I'm more of the data person, so I don't get involved too much in the planning studies.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Stephen,
This
we
is
can
Rich-
hear you.
This
Oh,
is Richard
Richard, yes.
Rank from the county.
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, yeah, any CIP project that we do, any capital improvement program project that we do, is always looking at safety and, satisfying Vision Zero goals. So that's just kind of baked into the process. Safe routes to school is looking at those issues as well. COVID has affected our budget as well, unfortunately. And so this year we're having to take a very hard and difficult look at funding priorities. But certainly those, and you can't even call it low-hanging fruit anymore because everything costs a significant amount of money to do changeable or real workable changes to our network. And so anything we can do from an intersection level to improve its safety with the limited funding that we've got is going to be done. And we worked with the MPO on the Vision Zero studies that were referenced and referred to. So after this year's budget, there's a workshop, I think, at the end of the month with the Board of County Commissioners to kind of really talk about the hard and fast numbers related to our budget this year and trying to prioritize what projects can give us the most bang for the buck. And that's going to be, projects that focus on safety and projects that focus on possibly even non-motorized traffic and trying to enhance the road system for users other than the automobile. But I can't speak for this new board. I just know that that discussion is going to happen toward the end of the month.
Richard, this is Diana Ramirez with the transportation team. I can tell you something that we are doing very effectively. It hasn't been finalized, but we've been working for the last 2-3 years in creating different initiatives for safety programs, safety approaches with how do we create projects. So I'm going to give you a list of initiatives that we're working through. The latest and most prominent right now is the Safe Routes to School that we have finally created a methodology and a process. And many of you participated in the process as well, that I have to thank you all for such a great participation. And again, I haven't been able to present because we have like 20 initiatives somewhere in there for safety, but I'm going to give you some of those listed. And when I say initiatives, is how the county is basically creating groups of methodologies, is creating methodologies for every group of need. And in that sense is the Safe Routes to School, the completed streets, and we have some Richard is working on completed streets from one angle, and the transportation division, or per se technical services division, which includes the transportation section, is working on corridors, pedestrian safety, that is kind of merged with the completed streets in a way. And that is when we created 135 prioritized projects proposed. We were hoping to get those out with the surtax, but right now it's just a list of prioritized locations that if the money becomes available, we know where we need to go because we have the statistics and we have done the work. Now we are also getting ready to prioritize projects around hard bus stops for pedestrian safety, also for intersections and for corridors and intersections for lighting needs. Countywide, we are providing another initiative about analysis and methodology for crashes. another one for lane departures, another one for unsignalized intersections crash analysis, and how we can provide low-cost countermeasures to improve safety, speed management as well, school hazardous locations, passing zone evaluations, motorcycle safety, micromobility. And those are a list of initiatives that we have. We don't have the budget and the staff availability to work on all of them at the same time, but we're working in about 6 to 8 of those already, and they'll be coming up pretty soon. And that's how we're approaching our safety so far. I hope eventually and soon we can put all this together into a presentation for everybody in here, but this is a little briefing. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I think Stephen Benson's been trying to talk in here, so we'll give the floor to Stephen.
Thanks. Yeah, I won't be too long-winded, because we did have the benefit of being able to present to this group previously about specifically our walk bike initiatives and Vision Zero. But generally speaking, it really just boils down to resources and what we've been doing really for the last 10 or 20 years. Over that time, the city has systematically gone through the roads that we have control over, which we're about 1/3 of the county's population and under 20% of the county's land area. So we're actually a lot smaller in terms of jurisdiction than most people realize. And most of the major roads within the city are not controlled by city government. They're controlled by FDOT in Hillsborough County. They're county roads. However, we have systematically gone through, starting with the roads that the city actually owns, such as Himes Avenue, 34th Street, Columbus Drive, Hyde Park Avenue and Plant Avenue, and Platt Street and Cleveland Street in South Tampa, which were all high crash corridors at one point in time, and worked with our partners at FDOT and the county to complete safety projects. The 34th Street project was the last one, the last major capital project that was funded with that federal safety money through FDOT, and it's just wrapped up, where we installed 3 modern roundabouts and made other safety and mobility enhancements on that corridor in East Tampa. So that's sort of where we've been. That was really the subject of my presentation a couple of months ago. But in terms of where we're going in the future, we are definitely taking a step back and going through really a citywide exercise to restructure and reaffirm our commitment to Vision Zero. Part of that was welcoming an actual full-time staff person to the city that will be our Vision Zero coordinator, Alana Brazier. She's on the phone here with us today, and her role will be taking a look at all of our policies, all of our projects, and all of the resources that we have at our disposal to restructure our internal processes to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can, and really leaving no stone unturned. A lot of that might end up being working much more closely with the county and with FDOT on those major roads, because that is where we see the highest speeds and the highest volumes. It's a logical assumption to see that, and in turn the highest crash rates and the most severe crashes. So I'm not going to steal Alana's thunder, because she'll be here with you guys at every meeting from now on. But maybe that would be a good topic of a presentation for the future, is to talk about the city's Vision Zero action plan and how that process is going to work over the next year or so.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Any other discussion items here for Dr. Wong regarding the methodology? I can say that every year that we've gone through this, it's always an uncomfortable exercise. The committee's it's been an item of discussion and public comment in meetings past. But I think the committee was also safe to say that that 0 fatalities, 0 injuries is the preferred route, but we certainly understand the methodology. I hope that's a fair representation of what the committee collective thought is. So if there's no other further questions for Dr. Wong, thank you very much, sir.
All right,
Have a
thank you,
good
Chair.
evening. Okay.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Have a good evening. All right, moving on through the agenda here. We have some tentative work program highlights and MPO comments hereby represented by FDOT. So I'll turn it over.
Great. Thank you so much. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can. Welcome, Alex. Happy New Year.
Perfect. Happy New Year. And thank you so much for having me this evening. My name is Alex Henry. I am the District Bicycle Pedestrian Coordinator for FDOT District 7. And this evening I'm going to be presenting FDOT's tentative 5-year work program for fiscal years 2022 to fiscal year 2026. So just before we get started, just a basic overview of what our work program is. So the work program is a 5-year plan that includes all different types of projects, from roadway projects, public transit, improvements to our seaports, airports, and regional rail. And it includes all types of project phases as well. So everything along the transportation project development process, from transportation planning, design, right-of-way purchasing, as well as construction activities. A little bit about how the work program update process works. So every year on June 30th, the current year, the first year of the work program ends. And on July 1st, which is the first day of the new state fiscal year, what was the second year of the program moves up and becomes the new current year. At that time, we add in a new 5th year to the program, and we use that new 5th year to fund the next phases of projects that were previously programmed in the prior 4 years, and to introduce new projects into the work program based on what's been established in the Florida Transportation Plan goals, based on the priorities of our statewide programs, and also based on our local, our MPO priorities as well. So the point we are at in the process currently is we have gone through the exercise of adding those unfunded phases and those new projects into the work program, and we had produced what we call the tentative work program. So right now we are in the middle of our tentative work program public hearing, where we've launched a website with all this information that's available for the public to review and comment on, which will wrap up this week, and public comment will be open until the end of the month. The MPO board will be getting this presentation next month, and they'll have an opportunity to comment as well. Afterwards, we kind of tie all that up and send it up to Tallahassee, where the Florida legislature reviews and approves it, and it's ultimately sent to the governor's desk for their signature, at which point it becomes the adopted work program on July 1st of the following year. A little bit about how we go about developing that work program, kind of the order of magnitude we look at when funding new things. So the first thing we look at is preserving our existing program. So delivering unfunded phases of projects. So for example, in a previous cycle, we might have only been able to fund maybe the first phase of a project, so just design. So in our update, we would be looking to fund the next phase of that project, whether that be right-of-way acquisition or construction, keep the projects that we previously committed to moving forward towards implementation. Then we cover cost increases. You know, as we get more into the design of projects, we find out that it's going to cost more than we thought it was going to cost. So we sometimes have to move around funding to cover those. And then finally, we add in new projects into the work program as well. So those new projects are of all different types, everything from safety and security to system preservation. So think of like our resurfacing program, bridge reconstruction, multimodal enhancements, as well as operational and capacity improvements as well. And these projects we are identified by looking at local MPO priorities, which we're going to focus the majority of this presentation on, as well as regional priorities that have been established as part of groups such as the TMAs, as well as FDOT's program priorities, including our strategic intermodal system plan. So now we're going to get to the fun part of the presentation, where we run through the highlights of what has changed in this tentative work program versus the last tentative work program. So we're going to highlight new projects that were not previously included within the work program, as well as new phases of existing projects. So that's kind of your cheat sheet there of all of the different project phases that we're going to be referencing as we go through the projects. We're also bringing up any time a project moves fiscal year. So there are some cases in which we were able to advance projects, bring them in sooner, and some circumstances where we had to push projects out a little further. So we're going to touch on all that with the focus being on MPO priority projects. So to kick things off, we're just going to touch on two of the largest deferrals we had this cycle. As you can imagine, as a result of the pandemic, there were definitely some impacts to the state budgets and our revenue projections. Less folks were driving, resulting in less gas tax revenue. We've seen decreases in tourism. And to deal with that impacts, we had to look at moving some projects around in order to balance our budget. And when you look at how to do that from a work program stability standpoint and from a kind of minimizing the breadth of the impact standpoint, it oftentimes can be easier to push out a couple of really big projects as opposed to having to move a bunch more smaller projects to make up that ground. So with that context in mind, we are deferring construction from the West Shore Interchange project from where it was programmed in 2024 to 2026, and the improvements along I-275 from the West Shore Interchange to downtown Tampa. Construction for that project was pushed from 2024 to outside of the 5-year work program. Moving on to a few planning projects that were added into the work program this cycle. Each year, the MPO prioritizes funding for MPO transportation planning activities, which we again added in fiscal year 26. And then 2 quarter studies along Martin Luther King Boulevard, the first of which out east from US 31 to Turkey Creek Road. We added funding for a quarter study in fiscal year 2023. And then another study on MLK further west from Dale Mabry to 40th, funding for that study in fiscal year 2026. Here are a few projects related to transit. So we've added funding for VC projects in 2026, and they are HART bus replacements, HART bus stop capital repairs, and funding for the T-Bar to Banfield program. A couple of highlights for Fowler Avenue. You might recall a couple of meetings ago, you received a presentation from Kim Spitz about a planning study we were wrapping up that was looking at different multimodal improvements that we could look at, we were looking at along Fowler Avenue. So we have funded the PD&E to continue to evaluate those concepts and added that funding into next fiscal year 2022. And we've also funded the subsequent earmarked funding to fund the subsequent phases design, which we advanced from 25 to 24, and construction funding was added in 26. And this is a funding partnership between FDOT, who's contributing state funding, Hillsborough County and the city of Tampa, who are contributing local funding, as well as the MPO, who by prioritizing this project allowed us to program federal funds as well. So a great inter-agency partnership with this project. Bush Boulevard from Dale Mabry to Nebraska Avenue. This project is implementing the recommendations from the West Bush Boulevard corridor study that was completed a couple of years ago. We were able to partially fund right-of-way in 2025. We're purchasing right-of-way along the corridor to fill in the sidewalk gaps as recommended in the study. And then Twitch Street from Nebraska Avenue to Ashley Drive, designed added in 24, construction in 26. This is a SIGP project that was submitted by the county with partnership with the city of Tampa, and they're looking at making some bike ped, complete street safety type improvements along the corridor as well. These 2 projects relate to the Heights mobility study and the recommendations coming out of that. As we have got a little further along in the study and the constant development process, we've realized that in some areas where we thought we were going to be able to get away with resurfacing the roadway, we're actually going to be required to reconstruct the roadway, which has triggered our cost estimates to increase. And as a result, we've had to push the project out a little, split the project in 2 and push it out a little bit. So the first half of that project, which will be from Tyler to Columbus, construction was deferred to fiscal year 2025. And then the second half of that, which goes from Columbus to MLK, was added for construction in fiscal year 2026. So even though these, well, we're split into 2 projects and they're funded in 2 separate fiscal years, one project will be let at the very end of fiscal year 25, and the other will be let in the very beginning of fiscal year 2026. So they're going to be constructed at the same time together, even though there are 2 separate projects in 2 separate years. These projects are related to the second phase of the Heights Mobility Study. The funding was deferred outside of the 10-to-5-year work program. We'll be looking to opportunities to move these back in, as the first phase is now funded, fully funded, and through continued coordination with the heart, arterial, BRT, PE that's set to get underway later this year. I'll also note that although we are pushing some of these improvements out a little bit, we are still actively have funding to move forward a series of spot safety improvements, including a number of new pedestrian crossings along Fowler Avenue and Tampa Street that will be coming online in advance of these projects. So definitely some good changes on the way for both of these corridors. A couple of changes regarding a couple of the green spine cycle track projects. The first of which over in Ybor from 7th to 13th. We were able to advance construction for that project from 24 into 22. And then the segment from Howard Avenue to Willow Avenue, construction from that was deferred from fiscal year 2022 to 2025 due to a request from the local agency. There is some redevelopment, some adjacent projects that are going on in that area, and they feel that they may have a potential to get a lot of this work done even in advance of that. So we kind of pushed it back to maximize our flexibility with that as well. And then the Tampa Bypass Canal, some design was programmed to start the implementation of that, was deferred from 22 to 25, just in consideration of the PD&E schedule, which just recently kicked off. A couple of intersection improvement projects in Plant City, Park Road at Cornet and Alsobrook, and Alexander Street at Jim Johnson. The design for both those projects was deferred from 22 into 25. And then we added design in 22, right away in 23, and construction in 25 for an intersection improvement project at Palm River Road at US 41. And that was a safety project that was submitted by Hillsborough County. Very excited about this project. We programmed $67 million towards a capital phase in 2022 for the Tampa Downtown Streetcar Extension and Modernization Project. So definitely a big win for transit in Hillsborough County, as well as adding funding for operational phase in fiscal year 22 for service development for Hart Route 11, servicing West Shore, and added right-of-way funding in fiscal year 22 for a new truck parking facility on I-4 that was recommended as part of a statewide truck parking study that was conducted. Rio Street from Gray Street to Cypress Street, right-of-way funding was added in fiscal year 2022 and construction in 2023. This was another CP project. This project will be widening Rio Street as well as constructing a bicycle path that will connect the new Howard Franklin Bridge Trail up to Cypress Point Park and up the U path to the Courtney Campbell as well. So very excited about that connection. And the next 2 projects relate to our I-4 frame project that is going to be installing some AVCV incident management technology along I-4 and State Route 60, which parallels I-4. And construction for both of those was added in fiscal year 2022. A few projects along I-4, some on-ramp improvements in the vicinity of Mingo Road. Construction for that was advanced from 23 to 22, and some auxiliary lane improvements from 50th to MLK. Design for that was advanced to 2022, and then some exit ramp improvements from 75 to the Tampa Bypass Canal. Design for that was added in 2023 and construction in 26. We've had a series of lighting projects that were added to the work program as design build projects in fiscal year 2022. So next fiscal year, which we're excited about, including along Fowler Avenue, Nebraska Avenue, and US 41 in South County. a couple of lighting improvement projects on I-75 and I-4 at various locations around Hillsborough County. The construction for those projects were deferred from 2024 to 2025. And then just a quick rundown on some of the resurfacing projects that were funded this cycle, all of which were funded for design in 22 and 2024. We have a project along State Road 60 and 2 along US 301. All of these projects will include intersection operational and safety improvements as part of the resurfacing project. And we've also added a resurfacing project along Tampa Street from downtown Tampa, Jackson Street, up through Tampa, Seminole Heights to Violet to where Fowler Avenue splits off into the one-way pair. And as part of that, we'll be making complete streets and safety improvements and moving forward some of the recommendations of the Heights Mobility Study as well. Almost done. Bridge repair and rehabilitation. We have added design in 25 and construction in 26 for some bridge repairs on the Gandy Bridge, and have funded various locations of approach slab repairs at different bridges around Hillsborough County. We added design in fiscal year 2025 and construction in fiscal year 2026 for those improvements. Just a quick rundown of the overall funding in the work program and kind of how that's split in between different boxes. And just a quick overview of kind of what comes next in this process. So as I mentioned, we are right now smack dab in the middle of our online public hearing. You can check that out at d7wpph.com. We have an interactive GIS map, which shows all of our projects that are funded in the 5-year tentative work program. You can see projects in your neighborhood, make comments on specific projects that will be considered and sent up in our package that we sent to the legislature. And we are also hosting a socially distanced open house at our District 7 headquarters off of Fowler and McKinley Drive tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. if you'd like to learn more at that as well. So the website will remain up and we'll be accepting public comments through January 29th. As I mentioned, the MPO board will be hearing this next month, and their comments and objections are due February 12th. Afterwards, we will send it up to the legislature and the FTC, and the work program will be adopted on July 1st, pending the governor's signature. So those were the highlights for this year's tentative work program. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Alex? And thank you, Alex.
This is Steven with the City of Tampa. I have a question.
Sure.
I was hoping that you could maybe expound a little bit upon the deferral with the West Shore interchange, and explain, maybe what the impetus was for that, and what the district is planning on doing as a result.
So what the emphasis behind the deferral of the West Shore interchanges?
Yeah.
Sure. So as I mentioned, there, as a result of some of the impacts to the budget, we had to look at pushing some projects back, and then kind of in the interest of moving larger projects versus a bunch of smaller projects. That was one of the projects that was deferred into subsequent years, which allowed us to bring in a few smaller projects as well. So was that what you were kind of getting at, or was there something specifically?
Yeah, that's helpful. And just to clarify, that it also includes the not just the widening of the interstate, but also, or the reconstruction of the interstate and the interchange, but also the new connections underneath the interstate for Trask Street, Occident Street, and Rio Street. Is that correct?
Right. Yep, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Alex or discussion items concerning the highlights here on the work program? Okay, Alex, thank you very much. Nice presentation.
Great, thank you.
All right, moving on here, we'll turn it over to Wade here for a review of the attendance and declaration of the vacant seats. I think there's a chart in our agenda packet to use as a reference. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Wade.
Let me get this screen out of the way. Okay, there we go. Are you all able to see the agenda here?
Yes.
Okay, great. This is the review of attendance and vacant seats. We did have resignations from Richard Johnson and from Holly Simmons. I know particularly Mr. Johnson was a longtime member, and we thank him for his time on this committee, and an active cyclist, avid cyclist. Ms. Simmons, again, I think thanks goes out to her for her emphasis on the area around Rocky Point, getting that connection, or getting our attention on that connection as well, and it is funded and moving forward. With that being said, we don't have to take action on these vacancies due to those resignations. We do have a couple of applications that hopefully we can consider in person for next time. I did also want to acknowledge Alana Brazier, former and now again member of the BPAC. So I don't know if she'd care to say anything, but
Yep. Hey, Wade. Thank you for the intro. So I'll keep it brief, but I'm excited to be back on the BPAC committee. I served on it for a couple years, about I think 4 or 5 years ago. And now in my new role at the city, this gives me another opportunity to come back and keep you guys informed of all the Vision Zero things that we're working on, and stay in the loop on all the other great things our agency partners are doing. So I'm excited to be part of this and look forward to seeing you guys next month.
All right, welcome back, Elena.
Thank you.
All right, Wade.
With that, I don't know if we have anybody here from Hart. I have not seen Nicole on the call, and I know Linda was going to be unable to make it tonight, so we may have to defer that project. But I did want to just point everybody to the website, which is hearttod.org, which is asking for comments and to keep you informed. And I'll put that in the chat for everyone. So hearing nobody from Hart, unless I'm missing something, I guess, Mr. Chair, we can move on to to old and new business.
Yes, let's go ahead and move on to old and new business.
And I also neglected to put members' interests on this agenda. So after I mention the in-person meetings, Mr. Chair, at your discretion, you could certainly entertain that.
Yes, we'll go ahead and review those if anyone has anything, and we'll do it right before adjournment here. So, Wade, you wanted to cover some in-person meetings here? We possibly have the opportunity.
Yes, sir. We can meet a quorum in not our normal meeting room on the 18th floor, but you would go the other direction when you come out of the elevators, and there is a larger classroom set up. They have put in partitions. They would have individual computers there, and the capacity there is 15, either 13 or 15 people, either one of which would allow us to meet a quorum. And there are several upgrades to the that had already happened. In fact, UV ultraviolet treatment in the HVAC system, as well as they've upped the outdoor air intake, which I will summarize in an email to the group to try and get some recruitment for next time. So hopefully we can get an in-person quorum. And I will need to ask for volunteers, and I'll need to give the guard a list of names. and all public comments will still be done virtually, so it will be a hybrid meeting. But those are the highlights of that, and looking forward to seeing some people in person.
Yes, I think so. It will be a sight for sore eyes, I guess. All right, so is there any other new business here? I think in the chat box, Brenton, you had a couple items.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Hey, welcome.
I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to the Bike Walk Tampa Bay website. We have compiled a list of 21 women bicyclists that we are featuring during 21 bicyclists for 2021. So I encourage you to visit bikewalktampabay.org and check that out. Also, we are gearing up for another Love to Ride challenge in March for Florida Bike Month. So we are really trying to push some participation in that. We're going to try to hopefully have some virtual events, since it seems likely that our in-person events will not be happening that we normally schedule. So that is lovetoride.org/Tampa Bay, and I will post both of those links in the chat.
Alrighty. Brenton, were you going to say you're going to create a team for the BPAC? Is that what you were going to do?
I could create a team, but I think one of our wonderful people should be the champion, like Jim or you or some of those hardcore riders.
Last March, that thing killed me. Alrighty. We can certainly talk about that next month there. Alrighty. Thank you, Brenton. Anything else, Brenton?
Sorry, I think Sally wants to talk, but she's not able to be unmuted. So, Wade, can you do that, please?
Yeah, I have Sally right after. I'm going through the chat box, and I had Peter Davids up next. He had two things.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Diana. Peter.
How exciting. Hey, Jonathan. All right, so two things. I think last month or the month before, I brought up the fact that there was the county. I made a request to the county to get some work done on Haney Road between the end of Fowler and 301, and there wasn't much action on that after the first month or so of seemingly design markings on the road. Well, I'm happy to say that last Wednesday I was riding that stretch, and the county's got equipment out there, and they're scraping up the old vegetation in the dirt, and hopefully in the next week or so they'll finish it and get it nice and clean. So what's gone from what could be a 2-foot wide lane on the side of the road had been pinched down to about 6 inches in a lot of spaces, and you're riding at 6 inches of shoulder up against 45-mile-an-hour cars and buses and trucks and stuff. So it's nice to see that the county stepped up and they're getting this work done. So that's my hand. That's me clapping and saying thank you. The other thing is, last night we rode from Waterworks Park out to the Campbell Courtney Causeway, and when we got to Cypress Point, the trail that goes from there to the other end, that the trail from Cypress Point has a sign saying that it's going to be closed on the 25th of January. So I was wondering if who knew why, what, and when, and how long it would be closed. Maybe the county or somebody must know why that trail is going to be closed, and because some of the a lot of bikes go through there, and I was looking to put something on Facebook, just to alert people that don't ride there every day that that's going to be closed, because they're not going to be able to get from Cypress Point out to the Campbell Courtney Causeway while there's no road there.
Peter, I will look into that. I'm not sure exactly if that is City of Tampa jurisdiction. I know it varies as it gets closer to the Courtney Campbell, and there is a section of FDOT jurisdiction as well. But I will look into that and get you any information I can find.
All right. I've been told that the road, due to its poor condition, I've been told by people there that, by other bike riders, whatever, that the FAA actually owns that because it's part of the airport property. So that could be who's working on it. I don't know, but.
we should be able to find out, and we can reach out to the partners at the airport if we need to.
All right, cool. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, Peter. Sally, you had a question. Do we need to unmute? There you go.
Okay. I just saw in the paper recently that there's no longer free parking north of Kennedy. Where are we supposed to park once we have in-person meetings? Or do we have to pay?
Yes, Sally, for all of our meetings, because they are after hours, by the time we are done with our meetings, it is free to get out of the county parking garage immediately to the east of the county building. So you can just park in there and not worry about having to pay on the way out.
Okay, thank you.
It's a good question, and thank you, Wade, and thank you, Sally, for bringing it to our attention. I did see that the other day. Alrighty, so moving on, does anyone else have anything from a new business and or an interest perspective for any kind of events that are coming up relevant to their field? I'm just checking the chat box as well. Brenton posted the link for the Bike Walk Tampa Bay newsletter. Alrighty. All right, seeing none. So I think with no other comments or commentary, we can go ahead and adjourn. Thank you once again for everybody's presentations. Very, very well done. Thank you everyone's conversation and discussion items. Appreciate it a lot. I know this goes a long way. And hopefully we'll see a lot of you next month in person downtown. And with that, we can adjourn.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.